Hello and welcome back, everyone, for this third episode of the Trio Cast. Today, again, joining us is Javier Garcia from CWI. We have Daisy Aguilera from University of Idaho, and joining us today from Bellevue High School, we have Christian Adamson. Hi, Christian. So we are going to start today off with a few announcements from some of our colleges. Daisy, if you want to go ahead and start.
Yeah, so every year the University of Idaho hosts a program called Avanza, which translates to move forward. During Avanza, we help students fill out the U of I application. We help them complete their FAFSA application as well, and we offer this program both in Spanish and in English. This year, due to the pandemic, we will have the events virtually, so you'll be able to register and have a chance to interview for one of 20 scholarships offered by the Idaho Central Credit Union. The events are going to be on November 17th, 18th, and 19th, revealing the scholarship recipients on November 20th. These events are going to be again in the afternoon virtually from 6 to 8 p.m. and we hope you guys can join us.
Thank you, Daisy. Javier?
Yes, so I'd like to throw out a save the date. October is FAFSA month. So if you are a student who qualifies for the FAFSA, we will be hosting a night on October 27th from 5 to 8 p.m. The way that it's going to look, we're still working on right now. It might be virtual, might be in person, but we will have more information at this upcoming podcast. And just throwing this out there, for anyone who doesn't know if they qualify for the FAFSA, you do need to be a citizen or a permanent resident, and students who identify as DACA or another status will not qualify for the FAFSA, but there are other resources and scholarship opportunities for you.
Thank you, Javier. This leads us to one of our topics today, which would be, we're going to be discussing how to pay for college. Primarily, we will talk a little bit about the FAFSA and how to apply and who should apply for that, as well as some scholarships. And we kind of want to give you guys a little backstory as to how we paid for college, and some of us are still paying for college, and what you can do and what you maybe shouldn't do. Anybody wants to start on their journey?
Yeah, why don't we let the podcast freshman maybe go first?
That's you, Christian.
Yeah, I'll talk about my experience. I think that one thing that's really important is choosing a school that is affordable to you. Usually there are a lot of different options for, 2-year schools where you can get your general classes out of the way and save a lot of money before you transfer to your 4-year school if you're looking to get a bachelor's degree. For my experience, my mistake was not having a career center type deal when I was in high school. I didn't have someone to help me kind of through that process. And if I did, I probably would have known that my dad was in the military and that he could transfer his benefits to me to pay for college. So it wasn't until the end of my second year that I realized that I could get pretty much all of my tuition paid for. But at that point, I had already racked up tens of thousands in debt. So
Christian, really quick, one of the things we've shared before is what high school we're all from. Did you graduate from a local high school in the area?
So I'm actually from Mountain Home. I actually went to a private school in Mountain Home for a few years.
Fancy,
yeah.
Must be nice, yeah.
Yeah, it was, the education was a little bit different than public school. It was a lot more rigorous, but it definitely prepared me more for...
Did that low-key sound like he said my education was a little better?
Yes,
Thank you for sharing. Which is totally fine.
I wouldn't say better. I would just say it was more difficult. It was challenging.
Fair enough. Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. So, playing sports in college helped a little bit with athletic scholarships. And then also, filling out the FAFSA early and understanding what grants I could get. That kind of money that I wouldn't have to pay back later on helped a bit as well. One thing that I didn't take advantage of that I wish I had was work study. so it was a little bit more difficult, playing sports in college and having the time to work and balance that in classes and practice and games. But I would say if you're able to save up some money to help with basic living expenses, any little bit can definitely help in the long run.
Thanks, Christian. Bouncing off of that, I love work study. I did work study throughout almost my entire time in college. Did any of you guys also do work study?
Yes. So I was awarded work study, and I had heard. So if y'all remember, I went through the college assistant migrant program when I was in college, and so that first year, there was this other person in our program who had said, "Hey, I saw this job at this multicultural affairs office," and they made it sound really cool. And they said they only have one opening, and I think they had said they were gonna go apply, but I did it right there and then. And I ended up taking that position. And one of the cool things about just working in, a professional office setting is that you do start to learn a little bit about, the skills you're going to need for once you graduate. And so luckily enough, one of the requirements was I did do office work, but also I helped with supporting the coordinating of events, you know what I mean? And giving tours and learning the appropriate way to speak to people and explain what it is you do in an office. And I think all that definitely helped kind of just set me up to be successful for, from just managing my time to executing events, all the little details on the work, all those kind of things. And even teaching me the appropriate language, right? Because the kind of way that you speak with friends is not the way that you're going to speak in an office setting. And so all those kind of little things I was able to pick up and take with me to when, as I started my career. Love work study.
Yes. Javier, especially because I know you've worked in financial aid, would you mind giving us kind of a definition or an explanation as to how students receive work study and what kind of work studies are available for them?
Yeah, sure. So work study is part of the federal aid, right? So it's something you can be awarded if you complete the FAFSA, right? And there is state and federal aid money that goes into work study. So if a student wants to find a work study position, it is something that is need-based, so based off of your FAFSA results. And one of the things is some students would like to be employed on campus, but if their EFC is high and they didn't qualify for need-based aid, then they would not get a work study position. However, there are student jobs basically on campus that are separate from what a work study is. And so a student will get awarded. Most schools will have a database of all the jobs available on campus. And a student can actually go in and choose the job that they want. In most cases, you can have that job. In some of the postings, you may have to interview for the position. And so it's another good way to kind of just develop those basic skills of just, searching for a job. And when someone is interviewed, the idea isn't that you need to have the qualifications. It's that you have maybe the personality or that you show that you're someone responsible, dependent, because folks are going to understand that someone coming into a position like that won't have a lot of experience. And that's fine. They're totally willing to help develop you and help you, kind of guide you into being able to do that. And so that I fully believe in that program. I do feel that students take a lot after from just being able to do it. And one of the other things is there's a lot more flexibility than you would get at a job, outside of the institution, outside of work study, because they do understand that you're a student first. So as long as you're communicating, they're willing to work with your schedule. And I think that makes all the difference for students.
Thank you, Javier. Daisy, did you say yes that you've done some work study?
Yeah, when I was a freshman, I worked with the International Programs Office, so I got to learn a little bit about study abroad, and so that was kind of fun. And now, you know, as part of the recruitment team at the U of I hire work studies now. And so I can definitely attest to some of the things that Javier was talking about is, even though I think a lot of the time students are a little bit shy about applying, or sometimes they feel like they might not be qualified. When I look at work study positions and those that apply to my multicultural positions, I don't always just say like, okay, let me see who's the older ones or if they have like all this work experience. I like to see, you know, if they can multitask, if they're, you know, maintaining their grades, and to his point as well, is, you know, work study is a position that's supposed to allow you to have a little bit of income coming in while you're a student. And so that's always one of the things that we tell our multicultural connectors is, you know, if you have an exam and you communicate that to us, like, we will always work around your schedule because your education is always going to come first.
Christian, you kind of talked a little bit about work study and how you wanted to do work study, but didn't get the chance. Did you end up having to work outside of campus?
So I did work a little bit outside of campus, but some of the jobs were, you know, they weren't jobs like some of the things that I could have done with work study that could have helped, you know, get more valuable work experience in jobs that I can actually use that kind of experience later on in life. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the really good benefits of work study, is being able to get the work experience that can help you later on, and then establish really good connections that you can use after you graduate. But no, I did some, you know, landscaping and, you know, just laborsome work, but that's one of the things that I wish I would have done as well, just to network and get better connections and better experience.
Yeah, work study definitely makes your network a lot larger, and a lot of those work study positions are also not just in like the student offices, but you can also find positions within your department of interest. So if you're interested in the biology field, then usually the biology lab has some sort of work study position. The art labs, even if it's in the library, just having some of those become your references can later help you find a good job or a job in your field. I know that's definitely how I came to a lot of my jobs, was having some of those references and having that network to help me out. So definitely, if you have not heard or don't know about work study, definitely start doing a little bit more research. When you're filling out your application, your FAFSA application, there is a question on there if you want to be considered for work study. Make sure you click yes. It's one of those questions that's kind of hidden in your FAFSA. It's at the end of one of those pages. Make sure you're reading everything while you're doing your FAFSA. It'll be on there. And then later on, I know there's a few, each school has their different ways of you requesting for work study. Yeah. So you'll have to figure out what your school requires, but there's other ways. And like Javier was saying, some departments do pay out of their budget, so there is still some student employment on campus that's not necessarily work study, but those jobs you definitely have to have some sort of relationship with those departments. So it's a little bit harder to get. But with any of those, you can always go refer to your school's advisors and get some more information on that. Yeah. Now with FAFSA, I know we brought it up quite a bit. What other kinds of awards can you get from them?
I guess I'll go again, since I worked at a financial aid office before this. But beyond the Pell, so work study is one of the need-based scholarships, right? Another one would be the Pell Grant. And so the Pell Grant is free money. You don't have to pay that back. And depending on your EFC, estimated family contribution, that you can receive the full amount, which is $6,345. Does that sound right, Daisy?
I think it's 175, 6,175. We'll double check. I'll check right now.
Okay, yeah, we'll Google that right now and then let you know. But it's in the 6,000 range. The other thing is if your EFC is really high, there you could receive a portion of it. So it really just depends, and you won't know until you fill out the FAFSA, right? Beyond the Pell Grant, then there's some other options. There's something called the FSCOG grant, which is kind of like the Pell Grant, but the pool's a little bit smaller, and if funds run out, then you may not qualify for it. So it's really important to submit your FAFSA right away. And that different institutions award at different amounts. And with us, the max amount for FSCOG, I think, is $500. And again, free money you don't have to pay back. If you are someone who has a high EFC and you don't qualify for need-based aid, which would be the Pell Grant or the FSCOG or work study, you will qualify for some loans, right? There's two different types of loans. There is the subsidized loans, which means that you do not accrue any interest at all while you're in school until 6 months after you graduate, right? And the other type of loan is called the unsubsidized loan. So this loan does begin to accrue interest from the moment it's dispersed into your account. And you don't begin repayment on either of these loans until after you've left school. So 6 months after you leave school or you stop attending. So if you take a break or you decide it's not for you, 6 months after, you will be required to begin payment on those loans. These loans do not require a credit check. I think that's something that a lot of our students don't realize or they get concerned about. I don't have credit. I don't know if I can get one of these loans. If you fill out the FAFSA, if you qualify and you do the additional steps to get them, complete a master promissory note and entrance counseling, you will get the loans under your name. So you're not under your parents, not under anybody else in your family. They're under you, your responsibility to pay back. Now, at larger institutions, at my school, it's not very common, but you may see this at our four-year institutions. There is something called the Parent Plus loan. So this is a loan that parents can take out under their name to help pay for your school. And I do want to point out really quick, thank you, Daisy, for reminding me that the loans given out through the FAFSA typically have lower interest rates. It changes every year, but they're typically lower than what you would get from a private bank or somewhere outside of the school. So if you need to take loans, that's something you need to decide, or you and your family need to decide where you want to get them. If I had to, I can't really tell you either where to take loans from, but these would be smart ones. Repayment options are more flexible, and we can talk about some of those things also. I did have to take out loans when I was in college. And now, just because I work for higher education, I'm actually under a plan for loan forgiveness. And that's a really cool option that I didn't even know about till, I was a few years in working into higher ed. And so there are these cool, like, little, not loopholes, but these benefits of if you work in these certain career fields and you took out loans, these type of loans, there is a way to initiate some kind of like forgiveness plan. I know they do it for education, they do it for health, the health science field, so being a doctor, nurse, depending on where you work, you may qualify. And there's being a teacher, I think, is another one of the paths. So just something to think about. And if there's anything I missed, Daisy, I know, or Christian, fill in the spots that I didn't cover.
I think the one thing that I would probably just add to that is, like, when students are filling out the FAFSA, it's going to ask you if you're interested in 4-year or 2-year schools. I always tell students, consider applying to both, because you never know, things like the pandemic, a lot of students weren't anticipating that. And so I always tell students to cover all your bases for both 4-year and 2-year schools. Mention that just mention that you're going to want to apply to 4-year institutions, because the amount that is awarded is different between 2-year and 4-year schools, just because tuition is much higher at 4-year universities. So even though you will have the same EFC, meaning that you will get about the same amount of funds to cover your costs, It will look a little bit different depending whether you get admitted into a four-year school or if you register for classes at a community college, because obviously the costs for a community college are much lower.
Yeah, that also works for different institutions, just have different tuition rates depending on like cities, locations. And so the actual formula that they use, if I can just put it very simply, is the cost of attendance, which would just includes like room and board, tuition, books, lodging, all those kind of things are factored in. A bigger school, like in New York, for example, where the standard of living is higher versus a smaller, school like in Caldwell, Idaho, tuition might be way different because the, cost of living, cost of attending would be way different. So it's cost of attendance minus your estimated family contribution, which comes from the FAFSA, right? It equals your financial need. So how much support you're going to need. And a lot of schools use that to factor in about how much you may receive for aid.
Christian, did you want to add anything?
Sure. Yeah, I think another good thing to add for federal loans is that the interest rate is locked in for the life of the loan, which is really good. So that rate won't change as long as you're paying it back. And also the grace period that you have after you graduate before you have to start paying that back. I don't remember if you mentioned that or not, but
yeah. And it looks like we did clarify that the Pell Grant, the max amount is $6,345. So that's a good chunk of change.
That's a really good chunk of change. Talking real quick about just one more thing to add about those loans. Taking out federal loans, if you do need to take out loans, I normally recommend at least considering the federal loans versus private loans. One great example on that is right now with the pandemic, there is no interest charge. And I believe they extended the repayment until December. So that's just one example as to private loans versus federal loans. Federal loans sometimes have a lot more benefits than some of those private loans. So but going over that,
sorry to interrupt, Iman. There's one thing that I did forget to say with the FAFSA right now. What they're doing is they ask that students use parents' tax information from 2 years prior, which is a big thing. And so all of us here have helped students complete the FAFSA, right, in our jobs. And I know that students a lot of times will say, but what my parents made 2 years ago isn't necessarily like our current situation now, right? A lot of times it could be for many reasons, loss of a job or cut down in hours. Family dynamics have switched. Maybe it's one parent now instead of two, whatever it is, that tends to affect students. And so if students find themselves in that situation, the financial aid offices at the college the student wants to attend can help reevaluate that information and help them with some kind of process to reflect the current financial situation of the family. So I forgot to say that, so I just want to clarify that really quick before we move on to the next thing.
Thank you, Javier. That's a great point to bring up, especially with all the changes right now. A lot of families are not doing what they were doing 2 years ago. There is a benefit as for using those the taxes from 2 years prior, but it might bring up some things for this coming year. So definitely work with your counselors, work with your trio specialists, work with your college representatives on getting your FAFSA or any, if you have any questions regarding the FAFSA and how that works. Now, with loans, I usually do not recommend students take out those loans until maybe their third or fourth year. When did you guys start taking out loans? Did everyone take out loans? End up taking student loans? Okay.
I know two people.
When did you guys have to
who
take
did not have to because they, were very proactive about scholarships and maybe they had money saved up because they, worked during the summer and their families maybe supported. But for me, I think it was my second year when I had to take out my very first loan, and it was really scary. But I was investing in my future, and that's the way I saw it. Like, being here, what does that mean? Having this opportunity to complete my higher education degree, what opportunities will I have? And really, what will I be able to bring back to my family, like, after I do this? That was all kind of like factors that helped me just make that decision, right? And like I mentioned earlier, so to take out a loan, there is no kind of credit check. So if students are scared about, well, to take out a federal loan, there is no credit check required. Mom and dad do not have to sign on your behalf. You do have to complete something called entrance counseling. So they do a thing where they teach you about smart borrowing. If you're taking out this amount and then it has this interest, in 4 years, it might equal this. And so the federal government tries to give students some kind of reasonable information about like what it means to be a smart borrower. Like, don't overborrow. If you don't need the money, don't take it, because you do have to pay back, and then with interest later on. And then you have to complete something called a master promissory note, which is basically the legal binding document that locks you in to pay back that loan, that you understand if you take this money, you do have to pay it back. So it's not enough to just accept the loan, as you're looking at your financial aid award letter, but there is additional steps to complete before you can get it.
I think everyone is just really scared when you hear the word loans. But I think just looking back at my experience now working with students, I think it's just a matter of educating yourself on the process of loans and how to repay them, and understanding what you're taking out. And it's very manageable. I mean, I wish I knew half of the things that I know now. I think it would have really helped me back then. But I think that's what we're trying to do as admission counselors and financial aid advisors and, college partners, is we're just trying to help educate you on that. So don't be afraid about, going to a FAFSA night. Even if you're almost done with your FAFSA, like, stay, ask questions, because, as, FAFSA just opened up, more students are filling it out, which means there's more students with questions. And I think the earlier you start on the process of understanding how these student loans work, I think you will feel a little bit more comfortable about having to take them out should you need to. And then to Javier's point is just understanding what you're getting yourself into, and also not taking out more than you really need.
Yes, that's a great point. A lot of what I hear is students not going to school is, I'm afraid of being in debt. I don't want to take out loans, but there are other options out there, scholarships, all kinds of stuff. Loans, I mean, they are scary, but doing your research and knowing when to take out loans, and how to take them out. And then one of the things I feel like we don't talk about as much is, you don't have to accept a loan, and you don't have to accept a full loan. I think that's one of the things that no one mentioned to me when I was taking out my loans, is I didn't have to take out the $5,000 extra to my loan. So I mean, it was nice at the time, but now having to repay them, it's a whole different story. And I wish somebody would have said, hey, you don't actually have to take the full amount, just take out what you need. So that is a great point, Daisy. Definitely look into those loans and do your research, and ask questions. We have so much information. We have a lot of experience working with other students in our personal stories, that it doesn't help anybody. We keep it to ourselves. So we definitely want to share that information, but we need students to ask as well. Even if you think, like I said, I thought I knew everything, I did not know everything. And I know that that's really hard for students to do, is ask questions, but you need to ask questions. We are here to help you. We have lots of information to share with you.
We can't help you if you don't ask. And sometimes something isn't, you miss something, or you're not there a day that, someone's covering something about college, and, don't feel like you have to figure everything out yourself. If you have a question or a concern, or, you want some more guidance, that's what we're all here for. There's a lot of people that are there to help. So,
Christian, I see soccer on your shirt. You said you did athletics, right, in college?
Yeah.
Where were you? Did you get a scholarship for that?
So I did get a scholarship. It wasn't, as much as I'd wanted my first year. As I played throughout my 4 years, it increased over time. But, part of my thing was I wanted to follow my friends to a certain school, and, that really changed some things. It was a lot more competitive, and, so the cost of the school was higher, and I could have made some better choices to help myself financially. But I did play at Northwest Nazarene University in Nampa, Idaho, for 4 years. So that's another good thing. I mean, if you have those options, if you have any other, clubs or organizations that you're involved with, or sports, or, there's other ways to get money. And then we talked a little bit about scholarships, but there's so many opportunities for different scholarships. And I know Darcy and I, the way that we explain it to students is it's like a job. You're putting in time to fill out applications and do essays just like you would for any other job. And a lot of times the money that you can get is much higher than an hourly wage. So it can definitely save you a lot of money if you put in the time to find scholarships that you're eligible for.
Are you able to give us a little bit more information as to how you got some of these scholarships, especially the athletic related ones?
So for the athletics, I think that it's really important that you communicate far in advance with the coaches. They do their recruiting really early, and they kind of divvy out their scholarship funds early on. So it's really important to be in communication with schools and with the coaches.
Say early, how early are we talking about?
Early, I would say at least a couple of years. So your junior year.
So is that you going out of your way to connect with the coach? I guess they're kind of a judge too, because they're gonna decide if you get it or not. Yeah, right. Y'all know where I was going with that.
Yeah. You have to advocate for yourself. I mean, a lot of times these coaches aren't going to reach out to you. You have to take the initiative to show that you're interested in the school and interested in playing. Those are the players. Those are the students that they're looking for. The ones that advocate for themselves and take initiative.
Were there any other scholarships that you received while in school? Did you do any institutional scholarships?
So there were some that you had for just academics, and there were some leadership scholarships and some other things. But other than that, it was mostly that, and then grants, and then filling in the rest with loans. And then also I was kind of like you, Yvonne. I didn't know that I could I could just take a portion of the loan. So me seeing that I can take 10,000, however many thousands of dollars. And then, wow, I have all this extra money to pay for rent and eat out and do all these cool things, and not thinking about the consequences later and having to pay that stuff back. So I think it's really good to think in advance, about later on. If you're going to have to take out student loans, think about the career field that you're interested in going in, and what your annual wage could be and how long it could take you to pay those loans back. Is really important.
For sure. Daisy, you've kind of talked a little bit about those loans. When did you have to take out your first loan?
I think my first loan I took out my third year. And it was, I think, more because I was starting to have a little bit more challenging classes. And so the time that I had to fill out scholarships, and obviously my GPA also being affected by these more intense courses, did end up having to take out some student loans. And then I ended up having to get a job off campus. And so, that was like the first time I was introduced to loans. So, it definitely took me a while to get there. But, eventually I did have to use that as a resource to finish paying for school.
No, I was just thinking about, like, is there anything I regret about, like, you know, this whole process of understanding or learning what I should be doing to pay for college? And I think that it really does boil down to the one, I wish I would have applied to scholarships more, because I was lucky that I got into the camp program so last minute. It really was luck, right? Had I actually been applying to scholarships and you know, going out of my way to do that, that would have been great. I will point out, or I will say though, that, you know, when you're first generation and if you don't have, you know, a lot of support, and sometimes it can be really hard to find scholarships, right? And so if you're one of those students who's like listening to this for the first time and you don't really have someone helping you out, we really are doing the whole, like, you know, reach out to your career counselor, reach out to literally anyone who has gone to college. They will help you out. They will at least know who to send you to get you these kind of resources. And then I wish I would have been a little bit smarter with my loans. You're right. Like I accepted the full amount when I really didn't need to. And I heard a Christian say, and I did, you know, these really fun things. I did also, right? Cause I had some extra money and I don't regret that. But, had I known what I know now, right, I would have been a little bit more smart about my approach. And so I guess, yeah, what is that for you? Do you regret anything about, you know, that process? Did you learn from it?
Are you asking me?
I don't know. Whoever wants to take it.
I think so. I think the biggest thing, I think now seeing it from the other side, from the admission side, is don't be that person that expects to get a scholarship. Like, you really need to go out of your way and apply for them. I think, you know, when I see a student who's very engaged with telling me that they're interested in coming to U of I, those are the students that I'm like, okay, they're really serious about this. Like, let me start connecting them to more and more resources that I know of. But when there isn't that much communication and the students come to you like a month before classes start, you know, at that point, a lot of scholarships have already closed. And so, you know, it's really unfortunate to have to tell them, like, I'm sorry, there isn't a whole lot I can do at this point. And I think the sooner you connect with those admission counselors, the sooner you start connecting with financial aid, the more chances you're going to be exposed to more of those scholarships, because a lot of the scholarship applications are pretty early on in the fall. So like around this time, and they're making their selections in the spring. So I definitely would say, like, don't be that student that waits to the last minute. Like, get involved, ask questions. I know with at least my social media pages through U of I, like, I will post scholarships that are regional, they're statewide or nationally available to students. So you guys are always welcome to follow me on Facebook and Instagram. But again, like, just have the confidence to reach out and start looking for those scholarships. That's going to be, I think, the best piece of advice that I would give any student now, you know, knowing what I know as an admission professor.
Thank you, Daisy. I think that was a great point, and I think this is a great part to stop and reflect. And we're gonna try and keep it shorter. If you want to join us next episode, we'll be discussing a little bit more into scholarships and how that works, and what you should be doing towards working on some of those scholarships. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks. Bye.